All righty. Okay. Welcome to another Trauma Talk Tuesday segment with myself, your freedom coach, Nataushia Miller, with our guest speaker, Recover It All alum and author Tamara Brooks Barnes. So this month is a special Recover It All edition for Trauma Talk Tuesdays segments where we are bringing on alums of the Recover It All Freedom from Trauma experience to share their testimony of how the Recover It All program has impacted their life. Recover It All is a program that I offer in the fall annually. It's a fall program and it is 8 weeks. Actually, is 9 weeks when you include the bonus week of the program. And we just have a great time revisiting different development stages of our past as human beings to rewrite our narratives from a place of victory rather than victim, from a place of power rather than pain. And so it's a great time to just dig up some stuff, partner with the Holy Spirit, and have a fresh perspective of our history to be able to move forward into our destiny. So let's get into it.
Let's go.
All right. So, Tamara, share with us why you selected this title, From Pieces to Peace, for our discussion this evening.
Hi Natasha, thank you for having me this evening. What really made me select that title, it's kind of a multi-layered thing for me. And my reason had a lot to do with how fragmented I felt after I went through several instances of trauma in my life. And so I remember that my family moved to Boston. And when my family moved to Boston, I just remember feeling like I was scattered, that I wasn't altogether the person that I was born to be or the person that I had known myself to be. And so as a result, um, that's the place that I went to when I was thinking about what I wanted to share, when I was thinking about how RIA had really helped me, how the writing intensives have helped me. And it has helped me to go back and gather up some of those pieces that I felt were still kind of laying by the wayside, and realizing that the way that I was able to go back and pick up those pieces, I went from a place of peace. Whereas in the past, if I had revisited a lot of those things, I would have come from a place of um, violence, or I would have had a traumatic reaction, or I would have had some sort of negative reaction. Those are the things that made me come up with this theme. Everything had to do with gathering up pieces of yourself, nursing yourself, pursuing your peace, because I feel like it's really important for us to pursue peace. Further, another memory that came up for me is when I relocated to North Carolina. And I just remember feeling like, will I ever be okay? Will I ever be okay? And that kind of stuck out in the forefront of my mind once I met you, and once I started doing the inner healing writing, once I started really being proactive and doing that next level of therapy that I think is so important in the faith community, as well as just in our culture in general. We don't deal with our trauma. We don't deal with the things that have deeply wounded us. And I even made a post today online that said, go back and look at all instances of historical rejection that you have
Mm,
experienced, because it's important to look at those things and realize that even though it might have seemed big at the time, and you've matured and you've moved on, you may still have to revisit those things. in revisiting those things, then only then can you take that little piece or that little instance and put it in a place of peace where it will always reside. Because I do believe that the word says that the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. And so you can't get to that place if you're not even willing to acknowledge that rejection happened, trauma happened, you know, whatever it was, your trauma was, whatever your rejection was, whatever happened to me, whatever happened to you happened to you. I cannot tell you that yours wasn't a big deal, because to you and at the age you were genetically, it affected you, and it may still affect you. If sometimes you can say the right words and people will be reduced to tears and moments, and then there are other times you can say the right words and those people are in a space where they're able to receive healing and they come after it and they pursue it. And I think that's what happened with RIA and me.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I like a couple of things that you pointed out, especially it really hit me because you said you had peace when you went to revisit in pursuit of peace. Oh
Hmm.
my goodness.
Hmm.
So even the peace in the now, that means you partnered with the spirit
Yes.
of peace. You partnered with the Holy Spirit
Hmm.
to revisit with the intention of pursuing the peace of God that surpasses all understanding, to pursue the resolve with your
Yes.
historical pain points, to
Yes.
pursue the lessons, to pursue those missing pieces that will bring you into wholeness. That's
Yes.
what you did. That's what I heard, and that was just
Yes.
very powerful. So just to kind of give and I like how you encourage the people to revisit their historical rejection. So, just to give some framework to this, you said it was after a specific move that you felt scattered.
Hmm.
And so, just to kind of give us a little background about a piece of your testimony of one of those past traumatic experiences that connects to being scattered at that time of that move, and then working up to how this kind of, I would guess, completed some of the inner
Hmm.
healing concerning that particular trauma, whichever one that you choose to highlight.
I want to talk about being rooted. And for me, being rooted is a sense of place, a sense of home, a sense of community, a sense of culture, a sense of traditions. And my parents were very, very big about all of those things. So I always felt very comfortable in my space growing up, in our home growing up. I remember when we moved into our house, I believe I was 5, maybe 6 years old at the most, and immediately feeling like I belonged in that space. And even though that space didn't look like the space that I had come from, I felt rooted. And I think it was the confidence that my parents had in purchasing a home in a community that didn't look anything like the community we came from. And just their confidence and their ability to make us feel at home is pretty much all I knew from that age of 5 or 6 up until the age of 18, almost 19 years old, when my family became homeless. And that contributed to, the loss of home, the loss of culture, the loss of community, the loss of your neighbors. Everything that I had come to know was no longer.
Mhm.
And the way in which we became homeless, it was, to us, it was overnight. you know
Mhm.
People say, well, you're 18 or 19, you were a young adult. No, I was still my mother's child. You're still very much under your parents' authority and under your parents' wing at 18 or 19. And the only way that you don't have that is if that was taken away from you at a much earlier age. So you may feel differently about that. But for me, that was traumatic. It was traumatic for me. It was traumatic to see the pain that my siblings were in. I felt powerless and I felt like there was nothing I could do for them.
Mhm.
And not only that, but my family was the center of our community in terms of, this is where our family gathered. This is where our aunts and uncles and cousins and friends would come and we would fellowship. This is where the church family would come and visit at our home. We were a familiar place. In my world, we were the center of our community in which we lived. And to lose not only our home, but to lose our community, to lose the people we were connected to, all of that is extremely traumatic. Um, you lose everything. When you have come from a family with 7 children in it, it's a noisy environment, it's a boisterous environment. And one of the things that I've written about over the years as it relates to this particular trauma is how everything went silent. Everything went
Mm,
silent. Everybody walked away. Um, there was no support really there in the way that we needed it, and specifically in our community at that time, to be perfectly honest, it was a time where we really could have used therapy. We really could have used some extra support, and it just wasn't available. It just wasn't looked at like this is what is needed for this family. And so
mm,
by the time we relocated to Boston, we had bounced around and bounced around, and we had tried to continue to make my hometown and my home city and my home state home. And the reality was the handwriting was on the wall. It was never going to be home again for us. And
mhm,
that was another trauma, and realizing that, if I ever came back, if I ever came
mhm.
back to this place, that it wouldn't be the same for me anymore because everything I knew had been uprooted. It had been
Right,
uprooted.
right. Right. Oh, that's big. That's big. And thank you, Miss Helen, for your contributions. That I love that statement. Silence is another type of trauma when all you know is noise. And
Yes.
so how there was always the coming together, the community
Hmm.
centered at your home,
Hmm.
and the laughter, the gatherings, the this, the that,
Hmm.
and then for that to just go, and then everyone went, it was more of an extroverted. Everyone was had that community connection, but then everyone turned inward
Yes.
when that trauma
Yes.
hit. And so
Hmm.
now it's silence because now everyone is trying to process what happened
Yes.
individually and not knowing how to necessarily um, put language to
Right.
their human response to this trauma to come together collectively to even have conversation about it. And that's big. And when we're looking at that particular age, 18, 19, that's the height of adolescence, and the crisis that we're having at that time is identity versus role confusion. And in
Yes.
the midst of that, you're in the storm of homelessness and everything that has been the foundation that had been laid, the roots of your
Hmm.
identity has just been swept from up under your feet. And now it's like, and you're still in the adolescence trying to figure out your own identity as an individual
Right.
anyway, apart
Right.
from being your mother's child, your father's child, being a sister, of this, of
Hmm.
that within the family structure. So that's
Yes.
really, really big and key. Oh my goodness. So I could
Right.
really, so now we really can understand why you say that you felt like pieces of you were scattered at that time,
Yes.
and one of your pursuits with going back to revisit that traumatic experience was to gather your pieces to find some wholeness once
Yes.
again in that space. So how did that work out with your process with that?
I I just remember feeling like I was drowning at some point because it was, as I said, it was like the loss of the community. The loss of the home was huge. Don't misunderstand me. But I believe for me personally, feeling like I had lost my community, I had lost my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my best friend. We had grown up together. The loss of my church community, which we were very much an active part of, just feeling like everything had just been a total loss, and there was no way to go back and reclaim any of it. There was no way to let people know that I don't want to lose you too. I've
Right.
already lost enough. Um, and really not knowing how to articulate um, the level of loss,
Right.
and the level, to be honest, the level of grief of the loss. It took me probably 12 years or more before I actually started the grieving process. Because when you're in survival mode, when you're just
Right.
trying to make sure you have a roof over your head, or you're
Yeah.
trying to make sure that some creeper isn't going to violate you or your siblings, or any of those types of modes, when you're in pure survival mode, you don't have time to grieve.
Right.
um,
Right.
and when I look at all the trauma in our community today, especially with the videos and things of all of the public lynchings of people of color, I can relate to how communities are feeling, because you just kind of go into a fight or flight mode, you
Hmm.
know, and then you have all these people kind of in your space and in your face telling you that your feelings aren't legitimate, you know,
Right. Right.
that you need to just get over it. Or some of the things, when I think about some of the things that were said to me personally about my condition or my situation, or about my parents, or about me or my siblings, I thank God that He just protected my mind, and He
Right.
protected my heart. And He, the best thing that ever happened to me was moving to North Carolina, because that really kind of pushed me into that journey of grieving, but
Hmm.
it also pushed me into that journey of pursuing peace,
Hmm.
all at the same
Hmm.
time. And it's so like, I would have a moment to grieve, and then I would have a moment to say, but be careful for nothing.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto God. So
Yeah.
having to recite scriptures to myself in that place of grief, and in that place of loss, and in that place of trauma, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I think the one thing that was consistent was God's presence,
Right.
despite what was going on.
Right, right, right. And that's definitely in times like that, it's his presence is what we have to keep moving on. Another comment from Helen. True. Survival mode does not allow, and there is no room or time for dealing with or coping with the trauma. You have to keep moving. And I
Yes,
think that's where a lot of those type of comments that I don't think it's really the intentions of people to make it seem like our emotions don't matter and that you got to move on and get over it. It's just that thing. It's that knowing that life is going to continue to happen,
yes,
and
yes,
and sometimes when we're dealing with something that's so painful, we really want everything to stop. Like, can we freeze
yes,
time for a moment
yes,
so I
yes.
can sit here and just grieve? But just
Mhm.
having conversations on opening it up to where we can express our emotions and feelings and human responses so that we can come up with healthy solutions, healthy ways to grieve
Mhm.
while we're still moving. Because life
Yes,
does continue to go on. There is responsibilities, but we still want to make sure that we're making time to have those moments of grief. And when I was listening to you share about the devastation of the loss of community, I
mhm.
really heard that cry out for the fulfillment of all of our each of us have a human need for love and connection.
Yes,
And a lot of times our it's not that the community doesn't want to be there or stay involved. Our trauma can traumatize them as well. And some people just
absolutely.
don't know how to be there for us when
Mhm.
we're going through something such as homelessness and all
Mhm.
of the various components that comes along with such a traumatic experience. And
Yes.
it triggers them.
Yeah.
And we don't know what their history is, where it's like, man, I don't I you know,
No.
I feel like I can't even do nothing for you. You know, they
Yeah.
feel powerless too as well.
Yes.
And then sometimes they feel like their presence or an encouraging text may not be enough because they see that you have a physical need as well, a
Mm-hmm.
financial need also,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not even in the position to meet those needs as they would desire to, all of
Yes.
those various things. And so and that's really, really key. And one of the things that really hits home for those of us, and I really want to say this for the viewers, is that if you do witness someone experience something as traumatic as homelessness and you're triggered in your trauma response, you feel powerless or hopeless in how you can support them, the best thing you can do is treat them the same. Speak life
Mm-hmm.
into them as a person,
Mm-hmm.
letting them know that does not, their circumstances, the storm that they're in does not change who they are. It does not
Mm-hmm.
change the prophetic purposes that God has for their life, and it is not the end of their story. And I remember when I was going through homelessness, I had colleagues that did that, and that's what I needed to hear the most. I didn't need to hear those type of things. Move on. Oh, you should be grateful. It could be worse. This, that, and other. No, I needed
Right.
someone to speak into my confidence, letting me know that, hey, you're still smart. you know,
Right.
you can get another job. Like you still remember you're educated. Like to remember the accomplishments that we had, because none of us are pursuing degrees and doing various things to end up in a homeless situation. So speak life into the person so that they
Mm-hmm.
could withstand that storm. And however you can support them in other ways, do that.
Right.
And so share with us, because we've talked about what was the history. Now we have
Mm-hmm.
some context of the trauma. We talked about ways in which you navigated, and we
Mm-hmm.
talked about your healing journey. So share with us one of these key components when you really noticed that an aha moment, like, oh my goodness, I've reached another level of healing from this. You know how we do something differently, or something like
Yes.
that, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm healed now.
Yeah. I think for me, um healing has definitely come in layers. Just like forgiveness. Forgiveness comes in layers. And so definitely I think healing and forgiveness for me kind of go hand in hand when we are talking about my specific trauma. And one of the ways that I remember is that a family member of mine, I was able to have a conversation with them, and I didn't feel the hurt anymore. I don't think I ever felt like animosity, and I don't think I ever felt anger. I think what I felt was hurt and
Mm.
feeling abandoned. And when I was able to sincerely have a conversation with them and those emotions weren't present, that's how I knew I had reached another level of healing. Um, when I was able to even, just pick up the phone like for no reason and call and say, "Hey, I'm just calling to see how you're doing." You know, those were ways for me. Um, I still long, there's a piece of me that will always long for my community, but I have since also built my own community. I'm very much connected to my family and my in-laws and my church community here in North Carolina, very much connected to the friends that I've made here. And so not only has it created um, a space where I know I've been healed, but also has created a safe space for me. I feel safe here. And, oftentimes I thought, like, would I live anywhere else? I don't think that that will work for me simply because after all the trauma and the loss of home and place and culture and community, I've rebuilt that on my own and I get to define what it is here. And
Mhm.
so those are ways that I've been able to say that I know I've been healed.
Mhm. Mhm. That's awesome. And that's what I really just heard you describe is one of the key components when it comes to trauma is and this is a harsh reality. We
Hmm.
cannot go back to how life was before it.
No.
Period. That is dead and it is gone. And so
Hmm.
I understand the longing for that community that once was but will possibly never be again because you can't go back to that. And then how you talked about creating this new normal. So now
Hmm.
you've created a new normal, a new community that provides the safety and all of the other key components that you desire from community until the complete restoration comes
Right.
from the family community, because
Hmm.
all of us, we heal at our own pace. And
Hmm.
so everyone that's connected and affected by that trauma, it takes different, we're at different paces and frequencies in that healing process. So to get back to that family unit, that type of community that you all once had, is, we can't control it.
No, we
Yeah,
can't.
we gotta just
Um,
be the
I
beacon
think,
light.
yeah, and I
Right.
think also I think that the other thing is that when I could look back on the memories that were built in that home and not mourn and oh, I remember when we did this, or oh, I remember how every weekend my cousins would come over and I remember how we would play church and I remember how we would have an Easter egg hunt, or I remember how we would have Christmas celebrations. I remember how my mom would cook for Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's and all of those things. Instead of looking at it in mourning, I was looking at it and I was rejoicing that I even had those experiences in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And those memories to cherish.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's so good. And then at the same time, I believe looking back on such good memories also gives us expectation. It gives us
Yes.
hope. Because it's
Hmm.
like, this is why I'm going to continue to fight for my healing. Because in doing so, I'm fighting for the healing of my family. And
Yes.
one day, we shall all come to a level of being these same type of memories again. So it's that hope. We
Yes.
with God, all things are possible.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Um, and not only that, but I also realized that having those experiences also gave me a blueprint for what to do and what not to do. So it gave
Mm,
me a blueprint for both, and they both have contributed to my healing. Knowing the appropriate things to do, knowing the inappropriate things, and you can move those over and you don't have to make those choices.
right.
Sometimes when you've had trauma and you haven't dealt with it, you repeat the cycle because you haven't dealt with the trauma. You know,
Right.
the only way you can undo something or not do something or redo something is you got to deal with the something that caused it in the first place. You got
Right.
to take a hard look at it. It's not being critical of the adult. It's saying this was good over here and this was bad and I choose the good, you know.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And then from that hill space, I'm choosing the good
Hmm.
without blaming.
Right.
Come on now. Cause
Right.
then, cause when we really get serious about working on our own healing, we
Hmm.
don't have time to be blaming people. We don't
Hmm.
have time to hold grudges and be unforgiving. If
Hmm.
anything, we become more gracious and
Hmm.
compassionate because we gain an understanding that they had their traumas too. Come on
Yes.
now, somebody. They had some
Yeah.
stuff that they had not dealt with, and they did the best with what they had and what they could do. And
Yes.
so when we really get serious about working on self, we become very forgiving, very gracious,
Yes.
very merciful, very compassionate. And
Mhm.
then God even trusts us enough to share with us some historical things that hasn't even been exposed. So
Yes.
he'll give us dreams, he'll give us visions, he'll be like, this is why Aunt so and so is like that, because this is what
Right.
happened when they was 3. He will give
Right.
insight, but we have to have the right heart posture for him to even do that. Because the whole
Right.
purpose for revealing that is so that we can intercede on their behalf, so that they can be healed and we can release them and not hold unforgiveness in our hearts. Because now we understand where the behavior comes from. Come on
Mhm.
now, somebody. So
Yes.
somebody has to do the inward work on
Mhm.
behalf of the family. So
Yes.
congratulations, Miss Tamara, for doing that, for being the one to, and it may be others, but I
Yes.
only know you for being one of the ones that say, you know what, I am going to work on me. I'm going to allow God
Yes.
to heal my heart, heal my
Mhm.
trauma, so that
Mhm.
the generations to come will be better, and then
Yes.
they'll be able to navigate the traumas of life without losing pieces and fragmentations of themselves in the process, because I'll be able to give them some blueprints on how you maintain what you obtain and keep progressing forward even in the midst of the storm and the fire. And
Yes.
then now you're the one that's entrusted by God to intercede on behalf of the entire family, because your heart is in the right place. Come on now, somebody. We serve a
Yes.
God that's about reconciliation, not strife and division. Somebody has to
Yes.
stand up and be the beacon light in the bloodline.
Yes. And it's not always
Whew,
easy. It is not
Lord.
always easy, but it is necessary. Yes.
Not easy at all. It's a fight, y'all. Healing
Yeah.
is both something you must fight for, and it is a weapon to annihilate the agendas of the enemy. What does he want?
Yeah.
He wants division and destruction in the family.
Mhm.
And so when we fight for our healing, now we can use that healing as a weapon to fight against his tactics to destroy the family, the institution of the family. That's the first ministry. It ain't no religion. It's relationship
Yes.
with God, with the family. And then we go out and impact the communities, the nations, the cities, and every other systematic structure in the society, in this world. So, how do we close this out? Because I'm over here all on fire.
Well, I was just thinking about the story of David, and when I think it was the Philistines, and they had come into the camp, and they stole the women and the children, and they took all their belongings and everything, and David and the men came back. David and the men of valor came back, and they cried and they wept till they had no strength left. That's what the scripture says. And I think that's what happened when you experience trauma. That was a traumatic event. They come in, the enemy comes in, he pillages and he plunders, he steals, he kills, he destroys. And then we have to go before God and said, what shall I do? Shall I pursue? And then the Lord will say, pursue until you recover all. And I think that it
Mhm.
has been like a guiding principle for me. I'm going to pursue every single piece of me until I get my whole piece back together, and I am going to recover all. I think we lost our host, but I'll continue talking about that because I think it's really, really important for us to recognize that we are our own best friend or our own worst enemy. And we have to choose which way we are going to go. We're going to have to either choose the pieces or we're going to have to choose the piece. But either way, we have to make a choice and we have to make the decision.
So peace is a choice, folks.
Yes.
And God has given you everything you need to pursue it.
Yes.
Go and pursue the pieces of you so that you can walk in wholeness and peace. All right, now. So I believe that concludes our talk.
Yes, it does. It's always interesting the road which we end up going down. It's always
Right,
interesting how we hit that flow and that vibe, and we just go with it. Yeah.
right. And you are truly an abundance of peace, because I always experience peace whenever we come together and speak, have conversation, always. So thank you so much, Ms. Tamara, for joining me. Thank you to those of you who caught the live broadcast and to those of you who catch the replay.
And
If
thank you
you
for
are
having me.
interested, oh, in learning more information about Recover It All, feel free to send me a DM me. And the first step is to have your 2-hour freedom coaching introduction, where I can assess where you are in your freedom from trauma journey to see if Recover It All is the best fit for you. The capacity is only 12 students, and right now we have only 7 spots left. So reach out, and the program starts in September. Reach out, and it's September every year. So even if you don't get in for this year, you can definitely get on the list for next year. So reach on out, and we'll be happy to share details with you. All righty. Follow Miss Tamara on Facebook. She is an author. She has an author page, Tamara Brooks Barnes. And you could go there on Facebook and find out more about her website, and to get her a copy of her book if you have yet not to, if you haven't already. And that's about it, folks. Do you have a
Okay.
closing statement?
Yes, I do. I just want to say that for anybody who is unsure about this program, I'm telling you, you cannot go wrong with being a participant under Freedom Coach Nataushia Miller. You will be healed in so many different areas of your life. Take a chance on you. You are worth it. And also, as a closing remark, I would like to say, on Instagram, you can follow me at Girl You Better Pray. It's the letter U, not the word you. So at Girl You Better Pray. Because I put like encouraging words, I provide scriptures, I just provide like positive messages for people to help them have a better day. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. This is your freedom coach, Nataushia Miller, and Recover It All alum and author, Tamara Brooks Barnes, signing off until next time. Peace and freedom, you all.